Let's talk about Jacob and Esau. So we're in chapter 25, starting at verse 21, right?
Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Now, I had forgotten that Rebekah was childless. I just so that's like continuous. And as you're reading it, I'm laughing because she's got nothing going on in her womb, and then now she's got a wrestling match going on within her womb. And she's like, "What's going on, Lord?"
It kind of broke my heart as I was reading it this morning, and for Rebekah, because it's like, here, the brothers are not, they're going to be separated. They're not going to like each other. Like that, what mom wants to hear that? And the other thing that struck me was just how she was the carrier of the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham with this nations inside of her. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, for a while there, she's not the carrier. There's this, there's one kid who's the kid of promise, which is her husband. And then now she's supposed to be bringing the next link, and nothing's happening. And I wonder if it's not God's like putting a curse on Esau, like he'll be weaker, he'll serve the younger, so much as it's God just seeing, God being above time and saying, here's what's going to happen. And it's almost like God's not like delivering an edict, too bad for you, Esau, but he's just like saying, almost like God's sort of in wonderment saying, this is how it's going to unfold. And of course, we know how the story ends, where the two brothers become friends again. Which is always God's heart and always God's story when it comes to this Abrahamic blessing. But this is not an easy thing that God's calling her to. These guys are not going to get along. And if we knew what would happen to our kids the minute we conceived, maybe it's nice not knowing as much. Abraham's first son is Ishmael. And it's the next one after that is the one of promise. Isaac's first son is Esau, not by a lot of time, by a few seconds, and that's not the way. And then even next week we're going to talk about Joseph, and he's not the oldest. And it's just weird how God always seems to pick the one that you don't expect. David, the youngest, or even people like us. Yeah. Can you imagine God picking us to do his thing? What do we have? Why would God pick us? I also noticed the favoritism, which it's just a bummer. Dad likes the macho kid, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really key, because I think it's a tipping of the hand to the family dysfunction. It ultimately, I see as, so spoiler, like I think Jacob right here and right now in this text gets misnamed by his family. And what we see later on, and we'll get to, is God resetting Jacob's name to who he actually is. Because it says that because he came out grabbing his heel, and they had an idiom saying that the grabber of the heel is basically the liar or the deceiver. They're like, oh, they gave him the name of like, you're a liar, you're a deceiver. And I think the dysfunction that you see in Jacob's life is actually him living into the family name and the family system that's been put on him. And God comes in and resets that. He's like, actually, here's who you are, Israel, the wrestler, which actually, if his family would be paying attention, God's like, here's what's going on. You got two nations wrestling. So it's not that Jacob's a deceiver. He's a wrestler all along from the beginning, but his family misnames him. And I think a lot of what you see, he's like, all right, so I'm the deceiver. I'll trick Esau and I'll trick my dad. And
He didn't pick to be the lineage, you know.
Exactly.
It's not like he duped his way in. I have never heard that approach. That I always figured, well, he was a deceiver, and then God changed his character, because that's not a nice name, heel grabber or liar. I've often wondered if, like when people say, "Hey, you're pulling my leg," you know, you're lying to me. If that's an idiom from this,
Oh.
and isn't it weird how we take on identities based on some maybe early experiences or nicknames or whatever.
He's a kid. Kids live into what the family system asks them to live into.
And not to mention that he does the same thing that Abraham did with Sarah, and like Abraham had this blessing and he took matters into his own hands, and that's how Ishmael came, right? So Jacob and Rachel over here, they've had this promise that he's going to be the legacy, and they try to grasp it themselves in their own power through this maladaption strategy. But so he's really just carrying on the broken dynamics that have been passed down.
Well, in his case, his real name, which he gets later on, becomes the name of all of God's people, because Israel is the nation Israel. That's we're grafted into that branch, and we're all wrestlers with God. What does it mean? Maybe we're jumping ahead, but talk about the identity of a wrestler and why that's a good thing.